Hi there and welcome. I'm so excited that you're here today. I'm going to talk about something that is a lot of fun, for me at least, and I'm really excited to share it with you because it's got a little bit of a provocative name. And essentially, I'm going to tell you to not answer people's questions. And more specifically, not answer people's questions because when they ask you a question, they aren't actually looking for the answer to their question. So this isn't something that I was ever told explicitly, but the day that I figured this out kind of shifted my world a little bit, and I'm really excited to share this new paradigm with you. All right, so for that cliffhanger of an intro, I hope I built the suspense adequately. But it's really an interesting concept that we're going to dive into today. And again, the premise is I'm telling you that you should not answer people's questions when they ask you a question because they aren't actually looking for the answer to their question. That sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook. So what I actually mean by that, let's look at an example. So when someone asks you, "Hey Jamie, how was your weekend?" Before realizing this, would have said or would have felt pressured to rattle off the agenda, the itinerary from the previous weekend of what all I did. Because that person is asking me a question and they're looking for an answer. And then one day I had this epiphany that people don't necessarily want to know what I did that weekend. They're asking me that question because they want a way to connect with me. They care about me. They want to have a connection point with me. And the easiest one on a Monday morning when it's been several days since we've chatted, is to say, "Hey, how was your weekend?" But again, they're not necessarily looking for the write-up of what you did that weekend. So after I realized, oh, actually, they're just looking for something to connect with. I did an experiment where when people would ask me things like this, I didn't actually answer the question. So maybe that weekend, I didn't do much of anything interesting, or I did something that, was interesting to me, but I'm like, do you really care that I watched a webinar about why email list is like the way to market to people? It's just, yeah. So that was a whole tangent. Sorry. But what they're actually asking for is, "Hey, Jamie, can you tell me something that would allow me to start a conversation with you and allow me to connect with you?" So I would tell them when I talked to my mom last week, and she was telling me about her being a master gardener because my mom is actually a master gardener. And that's super interesting. And until a few years ago, I didn't know that master gardener was a thing, but it is a very rigorous process and it's very well respected in certain communities. And so, there's one of two ways that someone could react to me telling them about talking to my mom about being master gardener. The first is kind of what I just did of, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea there was such a thing as master gardener. Tell me about it." Or, "How cool. How long has your mom been gardening?" Or the second one is, "Oh my gosh, yes, I know about master gardener. My aunt has been in master gardener," or whatever. And so that gives you the opportunity to either tell them more about master gardener and how cool your mom is, or connect on the knowledge that they already have. And even though you aren't answering their question about what you did the previous weekend, you are connecting with them. You are actually meeting the need that they were requesting. and everybody's happier for it. So that was the experiment that I ran, is for a period of time, whenever I was asked these questions, I wouldn't answer the direct question and instead just offer up something kind of similar. And no one noticed, no one minded, that I could tell. And I had some really good, positive, connecting conversations. When you're thinking about these kinds of questions, it's so helpful to think about, instead of just answering their question as kind of a black and white binary, they're asking what I did this weekend, they must really want to know what I did this weekend. And really taking a step back and saying, what they're asking for is, hey, can you tell me something that I can connect with because I care about you and I want to connect with you? Then that becomes a much more interesting conversation, and you are able to meet them and provide them with something that they are able to connect to. So I would be remiss if I didn't address this from the lens of an interview. So I used to be super, super strategic about interviews, and have lots and lots of resources about how to do an interview, including the behavioral matrix, which if you have a behavioral interview coming up at any time soon, please go to jamieonpurpose.com and search for behavioral interview matrix, because it will change your life and change your interview prep. All right. So in addition to that, the way that this don't answer their question manifests in an interview is, number one, please answer their question. Please, if they are asking you about a time that you failed, don't be like, I talked to my grandmother and she gave me her cookie recipe. Answer their question. But the way that it does manifest is by offering up more than just what they asked for. So if they have a particular question or a particular line of questions that they're asking, and you're just answering the bare minimum of the question, you aren't giving them the extra nuggets that allow them to connect with you. So the way that this works is answer the question. Use your STAR AR structure: situation, task, action, result, alternate action, alternate result, if you need to answer the question, especially if it's a behavioral. And then go a little bit above and beyond. Maybe add some extra color or some extra context, or, after you answer that one question, say, and then, when I did it again, this is how I did it, and this was the impact, and I ended up building a really good relationship with XYZ person because of that, and whatever. So it manifests in the questions themselves, and in the small talk before and after interviews. Really take advantage of that small talk. Offer up interesting nuggets about yourself. I'm going to reveal something, and for my friends who are listening who know me, especially in a work capacity, you will be like, this is intentional? It's very authentic to who I am, but it is also intentional. So somehow I managed to make a part of my personality about Golden Flake sweet heat barbecue chips. So I will tell you the story that I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. I spent the first 22 years of my life there. Very small town south of Birmingham for the first 18. Went to the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and then moved out here to Dallas, Texas. And when I moved out to Dallas, I suddenly realized that my favorite types of chips in the world are made by Golden Flake. And Golden Flake's headquarters are in Birmingham. And for some godforsaken reason, there are no Golden Flake chips here in Dallas available in your normal grocery store, which is a tragedy for me because I love these chips. They are my go-to chips, have been for years and years and years. And so it kind of became part of my charming get to know Jamie. She's gonna offer up this little nugget of, this is a glimpse of my personality. It gives you, when I tell that story to people that I'm meeting for the first time, or we're still early in getting to know each other, it reveals a handful of interesting things about me. One, I get to reiterate, yeah, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, which is, I mean, a very important part of my identity. And I got out of there for various reasons, but so I grew up there, and that is a big part of who I am. And I really like these chips. And I can only get these chips if I order them online and get like 18 bags of chips shipped to my house and spend $50 making that happen, which is absurd. If I drive home, or if I go home to my family who still live in Birmingham and in Alabama, or if one of them comes to see me and brings me the chips. So it's kind of this like funny thing that is not part of my job at all. But like my boss recently took a road trip through Alabama and picked up a bag of chips and brought it all the way back to Dallas for me, and came by my house and dropped it off because we weren't going into the office at that point. And so it's just kind of become this fun little thing about Jamie, that I just love these chips and I can't get them. And that's funny and kind of unique and memorable. And maybe I bring that up in an interview. Maybe I bring it up, in a professional setting. But that's the kind of thing where it's like, no one would ever think to ask, Jamie, do you have some sort of like forbidden love affair with chips that you can only get within a certain mile radius from your hometown? Like, no one would ever think to ask that. And so that's where it connects back to the interview. I'll get there, I promise. So where it connects back to the interview is your interviewer does not know to ask about the most interesting things about you. So if you stick to only answering their questions, and that's all you do throughout the interview is you just answer their questions, you're missing an opportunity. Because if you are really intentional about it and you think about what is the most interesting thing about me, or what is really important to me that's not necessarily related to what's going to be on my resume, or what's a really impactful life experience that I've had that the interviewer doesn't know to tee me up to talk about, and you just answer their questions and you don't offer that up, you're missing a massive opportunity. So find a way to bring it up. Maybe it's a bit of a stretch, but things are weird in interviews anyway. It's a very constrained setting. I promise the other person will be interested to hear what it is that you think is the most important or most interesting thing about you in an interview setting. So the real example, not the chips. I do the chips, and I love those chips. Golden Flake, if you want to sponsor me, I would love that. So I love these chips. Not the example that I want to use in the interview. I am very passionate about the equality of women and girls, and I have been for a really long time. For a while, the only language that I had for it was I'm a girl power advocate. Now I have more sophisticated language, but that still captures the essence of it. And so in my interviews to be a technology consultant, that might not come up, but it is a central part of who I am. And I think it is the value add that I bring to your organization above and beyond the daily duties that I'm confident that I can fulfill those. That's why I'm interviewing for this job. But why you interviewer should be interested in me is this other thing that adds to my overall, the overall package that I bring to you and to your company. and they don't know to ask about it. Because if you're doing it right, it's something interesting and unique that is different than everyone else. So you have to find a way to not answer their question. I'm just kidding. In interviews, please answer their questions. But don't stop after you've answered their questions. Keep going. The other caveat to this is a little bit of self-awareness here. If you are someone who talks a lot, please be mindful of that. Do not take what I'm saying as your permission slip to talk and talk and talk even more. Please, please, please be mindful of the right amount of information to be sharing and talking to be doing. For those of us who were like me, who were very much on the spectrum of, I'm going to answer your question and then stop talking, this message is really for you. You need to offer up more to give the interviewer the opportunity to connect with you. So that's what I have. Next time someone asks you a question like, how was your weekend? Or how's your year going? Or any of those sorts of things, just remember they're not looking for the exact answer to their question. They're looking for a way to connect with you. So give them something that they can connect with. And it'll go a long way in both your professional and your personal relationships. And I hope that this helps. Thanks for being here, y'all.